Okay, good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome, of course. It is Wednesday night, and that means, of course, that I, Ben Gregory, get another chance to talk to an amazing entrepreneur, somebody that you maybe hadn't have heard of, but they're doing some really amazing things in the world, and that's what this show is all about. This is the Digital You live chat show, and we're here to talk about all the crazy, awesome entrepreneurs, all the ones that are out there making a really big impact on the world. And of course, my guest is Mr. Luke Pearce. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Ben, thank you very much, mate. This is very exciting. It's pretty cool to find out where this chat will end up in a very short amount of time.
Absolutely, I'm thrilled. And so Luke's going to give us a 2-second overview of what he does. He's in some really cool things. He's into hypnotherapy and NLP, but I'll leave it over to you, Luke. Luke, tell our listeners and our guests, what do you do with yourself quickly?
Yeah, I suppose like what I do for work or career or mission, whatever it is you want to label it as, is I help people change the way that they think, feel, and act. And I suppose that's the 2-second version of it. And then within, this chat, we can chunk down on that and get a little bit more detail. But at the end of the day, it's just helping people find out different ways that they can think, feel, and act differently within their life so they can go out and do whatever it is that they want to do.
And that's key, isn't it? I mean, the way we would think, the way we act about things, just what's going up in here in the noggin pretty much is key to anything that we're doing, isn't it? So this should be some really good stuff.
Yeah, massively, right? It's like I think we've got to look out into the world, and like there's so much going on. If you didn't have, tools, strategies, techniques, or even the awareness of the way that you think, feel, and act, you can get sucked into a trap very, very easily. And we've all been there. We've all been there. Life throws stuff at us, and sometimes we don't know how to deal with it. And, and then because we don't know how to deal with it, we try other ways like drinking, smoking, or whatever it is. That's all sort of, things I used to do in the past. And at the end of the day, you do the best with what you got. And if you don't have much, so to speak, as in tools wise to help you out, then you can only sort of get so far.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And we've all had our mistakes in life. I know I've had plenty from that perspective. But one of the things that's got me through it is just working with someone and sort of understanding what's going on there. So tell us a little bit about the early years. When you were starting out, I don't think you've been doing coaching your whole life. What happened when you were a bit of a young tacker? What was going on there?
Goodness, there's a lot. So I suppose there's so many different sort of areas you could go. But if we work our way backwards, I normally tend to find that works quite well. So at the moment, for the last 3 years, I've been certifying and teaching people in timeline therapy, NLP, hypnotherapy, and just all things change that I've learned within my life that's helped out. So that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. Now, before that, I was in the, still one-on-one coaching side of things, but it was more the personal training and the physical aspect of, the human body. Within the first 6 weeks of being on a PT on a gym floor with 35 other PTs, whatever it was, I realized I'm like, this has got very little to do with the human body. Why are some people coming in and they train their backsides off and they're still miserable? And other people, so-called Mrs. Jones, she comes here twice a week, walks on the treadmill, talks to all the PTs, have a coffee, and she seems so at peace, so content with her life. What is going on here? And I had a lot of time there, right? It's like, I was there at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was there till 7 o'clock at night. So I had a lot of time to think. And I would start talking to all these different people, and I found out that they obviously did different things within their mind. They were thinking about different things. So that's, another chunk or another building block of the life. And before that, believe it or not, I was actually a butcher. All right.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it always sort of gets people's attention. They're like, beg your pardon?
Yeah. I mean, look, that would be a way to motivate someone with their personal training, just holding a butcher cleaver. You know what I mean?
It was funny, right? Because people were like, oh, so you've gone to, obviously cutting the fat, like in the butcher side of things, to cutting the fat, with their people, helping their trains. So that was always like a bit of a giggle. But the crazy thing is like my father is a butcher. He still is a butcher to this day. My grandfather's a butcher. I'm sure that my great-grandfather was a butcher. It was always just within the bloodline, so to speak. And I can remember leaving school. I said, Dad, look, I pretty much go to school. I'm going to break it to you. I don't know if you know this or not, but I go to school to literally ride my push bike and play footy. I said, I like school's not my thing. He's like, cool, you got two options. Go back to school, pull your finger out and start listening, or go and get a job. So, in a sort of really small story way, I went out and got a job as, a butcher. The cool thing is like how I got onto all of this change work mindset stuff, whatever it is that people want to label it these days, was when I was 8. I'm sure I was like 8 or 9 years old. My parents actually took us, as in the family, took us to a stage hypnotist show. Now, being 8 years old, I had no idea what this dude was going to do. I had the notion in my mind, I don't know, he gets people up on stage. It looks like magic. They cluck like chickens, do a whole heap of,
Was
stupid.
it really one of those cluck like chicken ones?
Yeah, it was an entertainment stage hypnosis show, right? So the cool thing was mum and dad said, right, everyone in the car, we're going down. And I grew up in Harvey Bay, right? So about 4 hours from the Gold Coast. And it's a small sort of beachy town, but not really. It's got the beach on one end and then it's got the bush in the other end. It's really strange because you've got people that are sort of like the surfy people. Not that there's much surf there, but then you've got people driving around in like the Land Cruisers and they got the roo-racks and the country thing going, right? So it was a pretty cool place to grow up. Anyway, we went down to the Mellow. It was called the Mellow Tavern. And Ron Rico, he's no longer with us. He was a stage hypnotist and he had a show there. And I'll never, ever, ever, ever forget that day walking into that tavern and seeing hundreds of people. And by the time we got there, everyone was pretty drunk, right? It was sort of one of those places. Obviously, it's a tavern, but they were all drunk and the kids weren't allowed in to see this show because it was 18 plus. Now, right. you imagine yourself being 8 years old and someone saying, hey, you can't go through those black curtains.
You want to go?
The first question I said is like, why? What's behind the black curtains? That's all I cared about. So, a few minutes went by and everyone went inside and all I could hear was the music and they're laughing and they're carrying on. And my mind was like, it's super curious, still is to this day. It's like, right, what's behind that curtain? I had to go and check it out. So I did. I went in there and I snuck in when, people were coming out the door and it was all pitch black. You couldn't have seen anything. But I tell you what, if my mom or dad found out that I was in there, I would have got my backside, flogged, right? So I thought to myself, look, I'm just going to hide sort of over here. And I remember sitting there and this man that literally looked like a magician, right? It was a show. So you could imagine what he was dressed up like and all these sorts of things. He was getting these people out of the crowd up on stage doing all this sort of stuff and talking to them really, strangely. And next minute, it looked like they were asleep. And then after that, he said, right, from this moment on, everything that I tell you to do is going to become your reality. Nod your head when you agree. And all these people would nod. And then he got, like lawyers, police officers, like people of the community to do all sorts of crazy things. Yeah. And I remember sitting there as 8 years old thinking, what is going on here? Is like this mind control? Is this all BS? Like I didn't know what to think because, I was quite young back then. Anyway, during the show, right at the very end, he said, I want to let you guys in on a little bit of a secret. If I can get these people that I've never met before within my life up on stage and get them to do things like to think that they're John McEnroe, I think the tennis player at one stage, get them to forget their name and all these other sorts of things. He's like, imagine what you could do to improve your life. You want to quit smoking, lose weight, PTSD, let go of that, whatever it might be. He said, if there's one thing that I could leave you with right now, he's like, always remember that all your problems are in your mind. And he said, also, your solutions are in your mind. The only difference is, do you know that or do you not? And that's how we closed the show. Something along those lines, like from what I can remember. And that's how we closed the show. And I tell you what, that always stuck with me. He's like, all your problems are in your mind. But so's all your solutions. So therefore, where do you go? You don't go to the apprentice for a pay rise, do you? So no, that would be quite silly. Well, where do you go? Well, you go to the boss, you go to whoever's paying you. And it's the same thing within ourselves. It's like, what in this thing is making the decisions? What in this thing is actually making stuff happen? Because I want to talk to that part. And, that was a sort of seed that got planted many years ago. And then as I got older, I started to go through more challenging times. And like I said before at the start of this chat, if you don't know how to deal with it, you're going to revert back to what you know. And my thing was just drink like everyone else. Right. Growing up in a butcher sort of environment, you're working with 15 to 20 guys at a time. It's like, oh, you got problems? Just drink like everyone else. It's Tuesday. Let's get drunk. And it's like, really? Is that the game that we're playing? But I mean, I played that game for, probably 16 to about 20. And I learned a lot out of it, but it was really rough. 9 times out of 10, you normally learn the lessons at your lowest rather than your highest. Most people tend to enjoy the highs rather than the lows, but at the lows is where all the lessons are, which sort of sucks because you've got to go through it in order to get them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, there's no question that, I mean, I know from my own personal experience and from every other entrepreneur that I talk to, there's a lot of common themes. Firstly, the pain that they went through enabled them to learn and understand where they want to go. And the more pain they went through, the more growth that they experienced. And probably in some ways, the faster they actually shifted towards where they wanted to go because that pain sort of pushed them towards things. And secondly, it sounds like they had a pivotal moment. Especially some of them lucky enough to have it in their early life, I guess, where they had something happen to them that shifted them and dropped the seed. Maybe you didn't realize it at the time, potentially, but now when you look back at it, it was that moment that probably shifted things for you. Do you think that was probably the case for you?
Oh, 100%, 100%. This is a universal thing. Everyone's got their story. Everyone's got their timeline of what it is that they've experienced and where it is that they've come. And like I said, this is a universal thing. Yourself, you would have that blueprint from the past where you had those little moments within your life, whether you knew about them or not, like you were just saying. And, that's why I think it's so beautiful because everyone has got it. And if you do not know about your so-called blueprint from the past, that doesn't mean you don't have one. It just means that maybe you don't understand it or you're not really aware of it just yet. But you can guarantee that every single person has got those little moments where it's like, oh my God, that really did shape the way that I do everything.
Yeah. And it's not just mum and dad, right? It's just the experiences that we have. There's just no question about it, whether it's being picked on in the schoolyard or meeting, Tony Robbins at a seminar or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And, sometimes the most insignificant moments within your life are actually the most important because, the biggest breakthroughs that I've ever had personally or that I've seen within other people or helped facilitate within other people, it normally looks something like this. They talk, and then they're like, I never really looked at it that way. Anyway, what were you talking about? And all of a sudden, boom, that penny's dropped, but they don't necessarily realize it. And then the next day they wake up and it's like, I don't want to eat that shitty food anymore. I don't want to smoke those cigarettes. I don't want to be in this toxic relationship. I don't want to work in this job 70 hours a week being a butcher and, whatever it might be. And things begin to change. And I think personally, that's the most beautiful change that you can get because if you were a police officer, I use this analogy a lot. If you're a police officer and you were going to so-called raid someone's house, would you turn the sirens on 10 minutes before you got to the house? Like it might be a bit silly, right? Because if they had stuff there that you wanted to get, they might get rid of it. But if you were undercover and you rocked up as like a postman or something like that, you get straight to the front door, that open up and you said, oh, by the way, not a postman, put your hands behind your back.
Yeah.
I think that's a really profound way to sort of, think or feel or approach any kind of change work. A lot of people are trying to do things, but they know that the sirens are on, so all the guards are up, and that's why it's like, oh, why is this so hard? With the work that that I do, it's the opposite. People don't necessarily know until it's already done, and then you sort of tell them, oh, by the way, that thing's already done, and they're like, holy shit, how did that happen? And that's why I just think it's so beautiful because it's a very easy, it's very natural, it's a very gentle way of change rather than getting the sledgehammer. Although sometimes you need the sledgehammer, right?
Yes, absolutely. I know I've needed the sledgehammer myself many times in life. It usually came from my mother or something like that. So, or recently my wife. So how do people hear through the noise? How do people hear through the sirens? I guess that must be one of the biggest challenges, right? When they are able to somehow stop and listen. How do you get people to do that? What's the words of advice there?
I think not many people really want to hear this, but this is sort of the thing that I've noticed is that people get to a point in their life where they've experienced enough pain. And they're like, you know what? I'm checking out. I don't want to do that anymore. And right then at that moment, that's when everything becomes very simple and very straightforward because of the sheer fact that they've got to the point, the tipping point, where the pain, the suffering, the confusion, the frustration, whatever it is, like they've had enough and they make that decision. And, you know, when people make a decision, they step on a different timeline or they step on a different path. They're like, no more. Never again. That's a bunch of, you know, BS. I'm not doing that anymore. And you would have had experiences like this. Anyone watching would have had experiences like this. And that's when, for me personally, as a coach or, you know, someone that's helping someone else change it, that's when I know that the work is 80% done. It's like, if you've made that decision, we're good to go. But when you're on the flip side and you're sort of in between, you know, you're in between the gray zone, you're not really on the black side, you're not really on the white side, you're in the middle, that's when it becomes a little bit tricky because the decision hasn't been made. You like the idea of it, you know that you want to change, but unconsciously somewhere within you, that switch hasn't really been switched on.
Yeah, and that's a really big thing, isn't it? I know myself as a fledgling coach myself. You want to work with people that are ready to make that change, right? Would you agree there? If they're just not ready, you're probably going to be talking against a brick wall.
Yeah, 100%, right? And that's why, you know, when you go into the process, the next question becomes, well, you know, can you get someone to that point? Well, the answer is yes. You definitely can. You can definitely help them and point them in the right direction, but you can't necessarily do them for them, right? Like we all sort of know that. So working with people that do not want to change, it's going to be one of the most challenging things that you've ever done. But in saying that, sometimes people are just 9 times out of 10 people, you know, I'm a people, right? I'm a person. I'm in that group. We're scared of change. We don't know what the unknown and the uncertainty and all the things, and you know when things change in our lives, it's like, oh, is my wife or my husband going to leave me? Is my job going to go down south? And all these different scenarios start to run through our life. So you can help people through that process, and I find that is probably one of the biggest. The biggest helps that people have is getting them to that decision of like, hey, you understand that whatever's happening right now that is so-called not what you want to do, you understand that that's got to stop. And when they actually make that, you know, decision on every level, a lot of the work is already done. I'm a massive believer that people are very smart. I'm a massive believer that people are very intelligent deep down inside. And when you give them a little bit of support, if you give them a little bit of space just to think and cut out the noise, they'll actually sort a lot out themselves if you can sit there and help them through the process. Now, obviously being trained in different processes to help them and guide them to go where they need to go is a very a beautiful thing, right? Because you can facilitate that change. But when people make the decisions, they invented it. When you tell someone about something, that's you telling someone about something. If they tell you about it, they've invented it. It's theirs.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure, I mean, my wife, April, she's gold at this. She'll plant these seeds inside my mind. Then I said, hey, you know what? I really reckon we should get a new rug. And I'm telling her about it. And she's like, you know, she wanted a new rug like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and she wasn't obvious taking you into all those rug stores, right? So
yeah, so what's all these websites, so Rugs Are Us and all this sort of stuff.
Indeed. And look, on a side note, I mean, I know what you mean. Like my wife, she says that she's not very good at sales, but for a year, she continued to tell me about how wonderful Dyson is and how great it would be to have it in our lives and yada, 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 yada. And it took her a year. But we have 2 brand new Dyson vacuums and a heater in our house now. So it's never giving up.
So, Ben, here's the $1 million question. Is life better with the Dyson?
Absolutely. There's no question about it.
Isn't it the freaking best? We literally got one of those, well, what do you call it, like the cordless one?
Yeah, we got the big stick one, yeah.
Yeah, I tell you what, it's literally the best thing ever. When we first got it, we've only had it for like, I don't know, maybe 8 weeks or something like that. But, you know, I go zooming around the house, you know, vacuum up everything. And yeah, I mean, like our house is spotless most of the time, especially with 2 little kids, but it's never been cleaner. And everything is so easy, right? And I think it's a really beautiful thing because if you can take that analogy of like, oh, I've, you know, waited 12 months or, you know, for myself as well, I'm like, I'm not spending $1,000 on a vacuum cleaner. You're dreaming.
I pretty much said the same thing.
I'm like, you're absolutely dreaming. It's not going to happen, especially when we've got a brand new one. But isn't that exactly what we do within our life, right? It's like we justify things. We don't really know the potential of what's out there. But then when we get it, we're like, holy, that's the best thing ever. Why doesn't everyone on the planet have one of these? Why don't they come built in to the house? And it's the same thing with, these tools. I look around in the world and I'm like, you need a manual of this sort of stuff of how you sort of work, or even a little bit of information like when you're born. It's like, hey, here's a user manual. This is going to come in very handy in the very near future. And my massive belief is like it's your God-given right, whatever your so-called God is, whatever you believe in. It's your human right to understand how it is that you work. Because if you've got things that are holding you back that can be shifted within the sheer fact of changing your perception, and you do not know how to do that, then I think as people, we've gone wrong somewhere. Why is this not being taught within, kindergarten?
Well, they don't do that. They don't teach anything like that in school. Okay. They don't teach you how to break through anything in life, deal with your feelings, move roadblocks. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, and I understand it's an old school way of that's not necessarily the purpose or intention of the schooling system, right? And I mean, like, this is a big old can of worms. Teachers do epic jobs, right? I go into a school every single year here on the Gold Coast, and I take the year 11 students for a term for 2 hours each week. I've been doing this program for 3 years now. So wow. I understand to a very small degree, because I don't do much there as in teaching work, so to speak. I just do what I do. But I understand it's like, man, they've got a tough gig. They've got a really tough gig of what it is they do. But all I'm saying now is like, could you just imagine? And it is getting into class more often. Frankie J, my daughter, she's 4 years old, and they meditate at her kindy.
Wow, cool.
And just these little so-called insignificant things, the ripple effect that's going to have when they're 20, 30, 40 is just going to be monumental, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's like one of the missions that I'm on is it's like, how do we get these tools out to people, and how do we make, profound wisdom just common knowledge? Because I think somewhere, I truly do believe that every single one, like I said before, we have access to this knowledge, and somewhere deep down inside of us, or even on the surface, we know. People know when your life is not going right. Why do you know? Because you're miserable. Yeah. Your health is, the health is up the buggery. You've got no energy. You've got no motivation. You've got no inspiration for anything. And I get it. I totally get it. Why? Because I've been there many times myself before. But the thing is, it's like, we know that. But then we get to the next step. It's like, well, what do I do? What do I do? I've created this life over 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I can't just bloody change all this. And it's like, well, that's your choice. You do what it is you want to do. But you might not necessarily need to change every single thing in this moment. You might just need to change one teeny tiny little thing that changes the game over 5 years. And that's what, that's what I did personally. I shouldn't say never, because I think I did at one stage. I wanted everything now. And I still get, into that sort of, that human trap of like, no, I want everything now. It's like, no. Play the long-term game. I've been doing this so-called change work now for since I was 18. I'm now 31. So it's been over 10 years. It's been a long time. I've learned many different things, not through only books and not through only trainings, but just actual life itself. It's like I go through something. I was like, you know what? I acted like a complete dick right then. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done this. That didn't turn out real good. How can I learn from that? All right, cool. Well, when you're in that situation again, maybe don't do that. Maybe don't think that way. Maybe don't beat yourself up so much. Maybe don't do this, this, and this. And, over those years, over 10 years, like anyone doing anything, you would have to come up with something that you could use, surely. And, it's a work in progress every day. People that someone said to me the other day, oh, this whole working on yourself, this self-mastery thing, like it's pretty time consuming, isn't it? I'm like, only every moment of every day of your life. That's all. And they were like,
How
yeah,
long is
so
your course for, mate? About 45 years. You okay with that?
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Now, have you ever heard of existence? It's about that long.
Don't worry, I'll send you an invoice just before you're dead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're just so right, Luke. I mean, I had a situation today where I reacted to something that I probably didn't listen to initially. And then
Yeah.
later on, I went, yeah, you could do these things better. But life is an evolving story. There's no question about it. But it's how we learn from every day and every minute. It's the people that we work with every day and every minute and that we surround ourselves with helps us grow, right?
Yeah,
I really like the Dyson analogy too. Sorry, one thing. The $1,000 for the vacuum. I mean, how often would you come up against that? Oh, I don't want to spend X dollars on that when people will easily spend that kind of money on something else.
yeah, exactly right. And it's a different way of thinking, right? Once upon a time, I was with using, maybe more modest language, the most conservative person with money, right? In other words, I was a tight ass, right? I was like, no, I'm not spending $1,000 on a vacuum cleaner. That's absolutely ridiculous. But then what you've just done, or what I did within that moment, is I just deleted all the benefits and all the experience of actually having it. Now, I'm talking about a vacuum cleaner, but I'm not really. I'm talking about many different things. Maybe once upon a time, I was like, oh, I'll get the cheapest car that I can. 6 months later, it breaks down the highway, causes an absolute, shitstorm that you don't want to do because of the sheer fact of like, no, just give me the least amount of things that I have to invest in. But the crazy thing is like, if you're doing that within the products that you buy, what else are you doing that in without you even knowing it? What other shortcuts? Yeah, what other shortcuts are you taking within your life, but you're unaware of? On one hand, it's very scary because it's like, oh my God, probably a lot of things. But on the other hand, it's like, well, at least now I know. At least now I know, and I can do something different about it, and therefore that will, change the outcomes, the experiences that you have.
Yeah. And that's not living in abundance, is it? And most people don't. They live in a level of sort of in between. They live in a level of fear, unfortunately, ignorance to what's out there, and that's sort of what governs their day-to-day is. But that's where people like yourself can help, mate. And that's what you're doing is just so wonderful. So for sure.
Yeah, well,
can we talk a little bit about just from my guests and my benefit itself? Talk a little bit about hypnotherapy and how that all works and how you. How that works with your clients and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the first thing that I always love to start out with, because everyone, especially myself, being that little, 8-year-old boy, I had no idea what hypnotherapy was. And then, Ome got up on stage, did some pretty cool things, and all these drunk people come up and just did a whole heap of weird stuff. That's one aspect of it, right? So you've got hypnosis or hypnotherapy are two totally different worlds. Absolutely. Totally different world. So hypnosis, I would say, is more about the actual process and the art of the technique. Now, you can use hypnosis for entertainment. It's good to go down, have a couple of beers, have a laugh, stage show, all those sorts of things. But then you've got hypnotherapy, which is obviously both the therapy side of things and the hypnosis combined. And that's when you can, in a nutshell, communicate with your unconscious mind directly. The unconscious mind is the part of yourself that runs the body, stores all your memories, is a house of your emotions, and it's really the boss. But it's the boss that sometimes we are either, number one, not aware of, number two, we don't know how to talk to that boss, or number three, we just don't even know that it's there to start with. And I mean, all three of those scenarios are quite scary, because if you don't know how to talk to your unconscious mind, good luck trying to change long term. It's going to be very difficult, 9 times out of 10. All right.
Yeah. Sure.
If you're not even aware of it to start with, then good luck. You won't even know. And then if you don't know how to actually do something with it, then that could, if you know about it, but you don't know how to do something with it, that can cause a very high degree of frustration.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh, I know this thing. I know my unconscious mind. I know what it does, but I do not know how to influence it. That's going to cause a lot of frustration, right? So I suppose in a nutshell, when you are doing hypnosis with someone, it's something that they already do.
Okay.
The art of hypnosis, you couldn't not be hypnotized if you tried. Unless you were no longer here, that would be a good way to not be hypnotized. But at the end of the day, we're always in different levels of hypnosis. When you go to sleep at nighttime, all right, you go down into a state of hypnosis. When you wake up in the morning, you're in a different state of hypnosis. When you're driving your car, you're in a state of hypnosis. When you're looking at your phone, you're in a state of hypnosis. When you're angry, you're in a state of hypnosis. It just depends. Number one, do you know about the state? Number two, do you know how to get out of it? And number three, what are you going to do in order to get out of that situation? So I always love to tell people hypnosis is something that you are. It's not necessarily something that you do.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so
that way, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's really powerful. And I heard this a couple of weeks ago, actually. I was like, holy, ain't that the truth? It's like, a lot of people say, yeah, but hypnosis just looks like you're going to sleep. Yes, because of the sheer fact that when you get deeply relaxed, the gateway to your unconscious mind opens up. And that's a really powerful way that you can communicate with your unconscious mind. But it's not sleep. Hypnosis doesn't put you to sleep. It wakes you up.
Yeah.
And it wakes you up from the trance, the altered state, the different level of consciousness, whatever you want to label it, it's all the same thing, of what you've been programmed to do in the past. Some people are really shy. Guess what? They learned that from somewhere. Some people are really scared of different things. Some people have phobias. They learned that from somewhere. Some people are scared to do public speaking. They learned that from somewhere. All our behavior has been learnt or passed down through generations. So when you look at it that way, it's like, oh my God, the very thing that stores all of these, thinking, behaviors, and feelings. How cool would it be if we could talk to that sucker and say, hey, you know what? I actually really want to be a public speaker. How about we come to a truce and you let go of that thing that has been holding us back, or you let go of the fear of the public speaking? I'd really enjoy that. Can we do that? And, at the end of the day, so to speak, your unconscious mind and yourself gives you a high five. And then it's like, okay, cool, we can do that. So now public speaking equals fun. Yes. And the person goes up on stage and you can't get them off.
Is it hard to do? Do you find is that a real challenge to get people to, first of all, understand that kind of stuff really is possible, and then secondly, to do it?
Majority of the people know. Majority of the people know, only because of the sheer fact that if people are coming to me, they've probably already tried 4 or 5 or 6 other different things. And now they've really got to the stage where they say, look, I don't care what you have to do. Hit me over the head if you need to. I just want to change. It's like, bingo, this is going to be the easiest thing you ever do. All right. But for people that are really analytic and they want to pick the guts out of everything, hypnosis is one of those things where, because there's so much in their head trying to work out what's going on, then what they do is they tie the knots even more, rather than the opposite of like, no, you need to let go of the control of, your inner mind, so to speak. And you need your unconscious mind, your conscious mind to come back into balance and integrate so you can actually do whatever it is that you want to do. Because like I said, we're very smart, we're very intelligent, but the thing is, our thinking, our conscious mind gets in the way and screws everything up. Oh, what's that person going to think? Oh, I can't do that. What if this is, and it's all future projection. Because it hasn't even happened. But the perception is all happening within our mind, and therefore it causes problems that people don't want.
Yeah. Well, what do they say? 90% of the things that we think of actually are just a complete crap and bullshit and don't really happen at the end of the day.
And it just never happens, right? And I think that's a very powerful thing. People come in and, let's just say working with someone with anxiety, and they say, yeah, but, if I go into work and I talk to this person this certain way, I feel like I'm going to, hyperventilate and pass out. I'm like, has that ever happened? They're like, no, not once. I'm like, has it ever been close to happening? Well, not physically, but in my mind every day.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, beautiful. Now you understand where it's happening, isn't it? Don't you? And they're like, yeah, it's happening within my mind. Good. At least now that you've got the awareness of where it's actually going on, because the stories that you tell yourself in your mind is going to be the worst thing about anything. I learned that when I was on my Bucks party, right? Of all things, 8 o'clock in the morning. 8 o'clock in the morning, I got thrown out of a plane skydiving. And when we were in this like dingy little Cessna, going up to 14,000 feet, and the guy that was, bolted onto me, he had to pull the chute and all that sort of stuff. He said, "Don't worry, bro. The worst part about it is the stories that you're telling yourself." Because I was sort of shitting myself on the way up. Never done it before. 8 o'clock in the morning, got blindfolded. And then when I took the blindfold off, there was a guy holding a parachute and he said, "Let's go." There was no 30-minute safety induction. It was like, do this, don't do this, and whatever you do not do this. I was like, Is that it? Is that it? He's like, "Yeah, that's it. Let's go." And off we went. So that's really powerful for people watching, this right now. Think about the stories that you're telling yourself, because that's going to be the worst part about it all.
Yeah, I think it's just amazing stuff. You're absolutely right, and yeah, I mean, we've all been through it. Anyone that's watching this tonight, I encourage you to just take a moment and just think, well, what's the bullshit that you've been telling yourself? And I'm not talking about coronavirus here. I'm talking about just generally in your life, what's holding you back. And then, as you said, Luke, how many times does that actually happen? How many times does it really even come close to happening? And what is the realistic thing of that actually happening? Because you're holding you back more than probably the universe ever will. There's no question about it.
Yeah, exactly. Another really important thing to sort of bolt onto that is these thoughts that we have. Like, you're so much more than your thoughts. Like, once upon a time, we all think and talk to ourselves, within our mind, right? That's what thinking is. It's like you ask a question, you answer it within inside your own mind. And if you're asking questions and you're getting feedback that is not what it is that you want to hear, or not encouraging, or not supporting, what's the chances of people going to do what it is that they want to do?
Yeah,
it's probably going to be pretty small. Now, there are people out there that are absolute maniacs, and no matter what's holding them back, they still go and do it. But 9 times out of 10, those people are very exhausted after a period of time, because they are pushing, but they've got so much mental baggage holding them back. Now, I was one of those people. Yeah. And when I did my training, and when I sort of let go of all my stuff, so to speak, I was like, if I can get this so-called level of success, whatever that is, to the point where I'm at now, imagine what I could do without all this stuff holding me back. Imagine what I could do without those voices within inside my head, whether you know it or not. This is the most fundamental thing. People are like, "Yeah, but I don't have voices." I guarantee you do. You're probably just not aware of them. It's not a good thing, or it's not a bad thing, but it's just something to be mindful of. But here's the kicker. Here's the point that I wanted to make. Anytime you're going through telling your story to yourself, the BS story, whatever it might be, you got to ask the question, who does this look like, sound like, or feel like? It's going to be someone that you know. Like, this voice or this feeling or this whatever it is, who does it look like, sound like, or feel like? It's going to be someone that I know. Could be mom, dad, brother, sister, uncle, teacher, whoever it is. And you'll be blown away with the answers that you come back with.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Maybe you want to create a business, and you've got, there's one part of you that's like, I really want to create a business. Okay, cool. Well, who does that part look like, sound like, or feel like? It's me now. It's, it's a person that's really inspired. Okay, cool. So the person that's got conflict, the part of you that says, no, you're not good enough, you're too stupid, whatever it is, who does that look like, sound like, and feel like? Oh, it's my mom. Oh, it's me, but from 10 years ago after I went bankrupt. Okay, cool. Well, now we have a massive inner conflict of, perception. You've got one part that wants to go, and you've got one part that's pulling you back, and you're gonna literally live like you're in a washing machine. One day you'll be left, the other day you'll be right. After that, you'll be up, you'll be down, you'll be in, you're out, and it's just exhausting. Like, it's too much. It's too much to deal with, right?
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff, actually. In fact, I'm having a bit of self-reflection here myself, to be honest. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and I love that statement that you just made. Who does it look like, feel like, or what was it? Who does it
look like, sound like, or feel like?
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff. And again, just sitting in front of a mirror, or just sitting back in reflection and asking yourself those questions. That's just really cool stuff.
Yeah,
so let's talk a little bit about maybe NLP if we can, and then we might sort of wrap up with what's next for you in the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, the NLP side of things is NLP comes from, or a very high majority of it comes from hypnosis. It was
Yeah.
modeled, NLP is the study of successful, well, it's just success really, but it's the study of successful tools to really help people out within their life. So the people that created it, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, they looked out into the world and they said, hey, what's working and what's not? Now, let's condense someone that's trained for 30 years as a hypnotherapist. Let's go and watch what they do. And realistically, they probably do four things. They don't go
Right.
and do 150 million different things in a day. They probably do four things really good, and that's it. So they started to look out into the world and get all these sorts of different people. And they're like, holy hell, they're only doing a few things. Let's find out what they do. Let's put it into a system. Let's make sure it works and start teaching that to other people. So in a nutshell, that's sort of how like it all kicked off. But I mean, if you wanted to get a little bit more detailed, NLP is really using your own senses in order to change your perception of how you see the world, change the meaning, change the story, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing of what it is that you're doing. So, two people get onto a roller coaster. One person gets off and they're as white as their shirt. They want to throw up. The other person is already in the line waiting. Why is that? One person has a link that this is the best thing ever, and the other person has a link to it. I'm going to drop dead. This is horrific.
Yeah.
So NLP is a really profound way that you can go in and you can help someone to change this to that. And when you do that, it's like, man, if everything is in your mind, then what's the limitation? It's only the person and what they believe to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that, you say you certify that yourself, or is that something you do?
Yeah, definitely. So for last few years now, I've been certifying and teaching people that at the practitioner level and also the master practitioner level. So, people can come along, they can get certified in it, they can use the skills and the tools just for themselves, or if they actually want to turn it into a business, a career, a mission, whatever it might be, then they can also do that as well.
But it's not just for someone that wants to be a coach, right? I mean, anybody and everybody can benefit from that sort of thing, yeah?
Hugely. Look, my biggest thing when I first started out, I was like, yeah, I want to create these coaches and all these sorts of things. And it's like, over the years, that's changed dramatically because the byproduct of people knowing these skills and tools, no matter what it is that you do, I truly believe is of more benefit to other people. If you're a builder, if you've got two builders and one builder knows NLP and the other one doesn't, I could damn near guarantee you that the builder that does know NLP, even if his work is not as great as the other one, will skyrocket over the other person because he'll know how to talk to other people. He'll know how to find out what other people value. He'll know how to talk to other people in their language rather than the other builder is just like, hey, where's my money? I built the thing. And they're like, well, that's not even what I wanted. So it's very, very powerful, right? And I mean, like I said, you can learn these skills. Like my practitioner training is 9 days, but that's 3 different certifications. You get NLP, which is first 3 days. The next 3 days is timeline therapy. So this is a really good one to talk about. Timeline therapy is the ability to let go of negative emotions from the past. Things like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, shame, disappointment, humiliation, whatever it might be. And also to let go of limiting decisions. Things like I'm not good enough. Things like I'm not worthy. I can't have the money that I want. So that's the next 3 days. And then the 3 days after that is the hypnotherapy side of things.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that definitely could benefit anybody, right? I mean, most of us, including yours truly, is certainly holding on to some things of the past that they probably still need to let go. There's no question about it. Whether you're working in the corporate world, whether you're dealing with your family, as you said, Luke, being able to talk to somebody on their level, being able to communicate a message to them that they understand, that kind of stuff can change the world. And we're seeing a bit of a failure of that at the moment in the world. There's no question about it. But if we can all just somehow talk to each other on a different level, on a better level, then there's only good can come from that.
Yeah, well, I mean, like fundamentally, if people understand how they work a little bit, if they just understood how they, work a little bit, there would be so much less conflict in the world that, it wouldn't be funny. But then on the other hand, how do we know? This is a big thing that sort of fries my noodle a lot. How do we know that the conflict that we're going through right now is exactly what needs to happen?
Very good point, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
What did I say the other day? It's like chaos at one level is cohesion at the next. You could look at something and be like, oh my God, this is all going south. But it's like, no, this is the most beautiful thing ever. Like super short story. Once upon a time, like when I had the butcher shop. So my mom, my dad, and myself, we had a butcher shop here on the Gold Coast, and it went down south. We had to shut the doors, went bankrupt, all this sort of BS. And it was a crazy time of life. But I tell you what, I look back on it now, the single most best thing that ever happened to me. Because after that, I started working in the gym. I met my wife at the gym, and the story unfolded from there. So, sometimes those things in life where we think, oh my God, Luke, but you don't understand. I've been through these horrific things. I get it. I've worked with people that I sit there with, and I'm like, fuck, how can a human do that to another human? But that's not the mission. The mission now is how do you transform that into something that you can, repurpose and use within your life to give your life some sort of meaning. And, that's super powerful.
Yeah. And I agree with you. Out of chaos comes pain. Out of that pain comes creativity. And out of that creativity comes change,
Yeah.
And there's no question about that. That's a process that everyone needs to go through. So What's next? What's on now that we're experiencing a little bit more freedom in our lives, especially up there in the sunny Gold Coast, of course.
Yeah.
What's next for you on the next sort of 6, 12, 18 months, mate? Are we going to see you on stage in front of 10,000 people when we can do that again, or what's the go?
Look, I would probably say no to the 10,000 people side of things. That has definitely been a dream of mine in the past, but I think right now I'm sort of, going with the flow, so to speak. And when I say that, I mean like following my intuition. I had a dream about 12 months ago, and that dream was myself, but it was like my great grandson in the future, right? So 5 generations in the future. And in this dream, I asked my mom at the time in the future, right? It's weird, but it was really powerful. I asked my mom at the time, hey, what about like our great grandparents? Who were they? What did they do? And she said, oh my God, do I have a treat for you? Go into the basement or the shed or wherever it was. And, there's a box there. And I went in there, and in my dream, I could see it, hear it, feel. I was living this sucker, right? I went in there and it had this logo on top of the box. I was like, what the hell is this? And I got all the dust off the box, and I opened it up, and in it was a hard drive. And within this hard drive, I said, Mom, what the hell is this thing? 5 generations in the future, right? And she said, well, son, that's a hard drive, and, it stores data and all these sorts of things. And when I plugged it in on this big screen, it was like me now and April now, my wife, and it went something like this. It's like, hey, if you're watching this right now, then that means that I'm obviously no longer here. And what I'm going to do within this hard drive and within these videos is I want to share the experience that I had, when I was alive, and all the things that I've learned that I think is going to add, massive value to generations to come.
Yeah.
Now,
cool.
this went on, and I woke up like sobbing. And April, my wife, she's like, dude, what the hell is going on with you? And it was just one of those moments within my life where I was like, holy shit, it's so clear. And from that moment onwards, I made the decisions like I want to make profound wisdom common knowledge. So in a long-winded way, what's next? What I really want to do, and what I am doing right now, is I'm collecting all these tools and techniques, but then filtering them through myself so other people can actually understand, number one, what the hell they actually do, and number two, how to actually do it themselves, and putting that into my own modality called self-mastery techniques. And from next year, I'm going to start certifying and teaching that instead of the NLP, the timeline therapy, and the hypnosis. Although those 3 tools are absolutely mind-blowing, they're a little bit old school. It needs a freshen up. Right, needs a freshen up, right? So, for myself, like I'm on a mission to create that. And look, I honestly have no idea where it is that it's going to go, but I'm listening to that thing within inside of myself that says, no, we're on the right track. Keep doing this. And every single day I do a little bit more, and I sort of sit back and I'm like, holy shit, where does all this stuff come from? And, it's been one of my biggest learnings is getting out of my own way. There's a bigger part within every single one of us. And if you just listen to it, if you just trusted it, and sometimes that's very hard, you'd be blown away with what it is that you end up doing, what it is that you end up experiencing. So that's where it's at for me. Who knows where it'll end up in, another 5 years, but that's the plan.
And that's what I love about talking about entrepreneurs. You guys, everybody, you have this great little vision. You let the voice guide you a little bit there, for sure. As you said, you get out of your own way. But most importantly, you're going to a higher purpose there, because you said to yourself, yep, the NLP stuff and all that kind of stuff, it's a bit of a red ocean at the moment, and there's a lot of people doing it and all that kind of stuff. Is there another way that I can help and serve and help my clients? Is there a higher way that I can do it? And that's what you've said to yourself, and now you're developing that. And that's just awesome stuff. So good stuff like that, mate. Congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cool. All right. Well, we are at about 50 minutes. We've had a really cool show. We've talked about all things NLP, hypnotherapy, and just some really important stuff with regards to subconscious and so on. And that's some powerful messages for anyone that's watched it tonight. If you caught it live, thanks so much for jumping on. If you're watching the replay, as most people do, please let us know. If you want to contact Luke, of course, please just contact him through the page here, and we'll send you his links and all that kind of stuff. I've had an absolute ball. I absolutely love doing this show. And as always, I'll leave my last 30 seconds with my guest. What's some final words of wisdom for anyone watching tonight?
Yeah, look, I would say that at the end of the day, it's like do something worthy of your time, your energy, and your resources, whatever it is you want to do. If you want to go and be a painter, go and be a painter. If you want to go and, be a daycare worker, then go and do that. But whatever it is that you do, just do it because you want to do it. And I think if everyone sort of did that, and I understand that sometimes it's hard to do that, but that's the mission. How do I do this? How do I do this? And, it can pay the bills and all these sorts of things. That's a pretty worthwhile game that I would want to play. So yeah, you're worthy to do whatever you want to do. Just go and do it.
Absolutely. I just love the confidence that you have in people. I think that's a really nice thing to hear. So, because a lot of people don't have that these days. So, if you haven't got confidence in yourself, lend it from Luke a little bit, because it sounds like he's got a wonderful soul. So, and then he'll help you find it within yourself. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Luke, for being on the show. I'm absolutely thrilled to have had you on tonight. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Good night, everybody, and take care. Peace. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye, guys.